Welcome to Strangeville. Welcome to the channel, gang. My name is Kevin Strange, 20-year veteran of the underground, cartoonist, novelist, independent filmmaker, and liver of people who like to drag race down my street. I apologize for the audio. I am but one man trying to look at the comic books that I love, and I am here today to look at X-Men Alpha, the beginning of the Age of Apocalypse saga. I'm getting a little loopy. We've been making shows all day, losing my fucking train of thought here. Signed by Joe Mad himself, number 530 of 1500. This belongs to my friend Johnny, who's down from Chicagoland. Johnny is the editor of most of the Strangeville movies that you can get at the Patreon link below. For $3 a month, you get access to all of my comic books, like Kevin Strange's Space Worms, like Too Many Dabs, Wizard of Ganj, Death to Strangeville, along with all my novels and all my movies. Johnny's the editor of most of them, but he's down here in Strangeville today to talk about the comic books that he loves, including the signed and numbered limited edition, or I guess it's not limited. It's just, I guess limited to 1,500 copies, right?
Yep.
So I have one too, right? Is this the one of the 1,500?
No, only 1,500 were signed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But there are millions and millions.
Yeah.
Johnny's here to talk to us about that. But before that, we're on our march to 1,000 subscribers on the channel, gang, and as we're almost there. We got less than 200 to go as of the filming of this video. We want you to hit that subscribe button below. Costs you nothing, helps us grow to that magical number that YouTube loves of 1,000 subscribers. And when we hit there, I'm going to put my 164-page full-color graphic novel. You could call Kevin Strange's Space Worms the Age of Apocalypse of the Strangeville universe, couldn't you? No, the two have absolutely nothing in common. But I'm going to put this up for free on the Patreon for all of you loyal Strangeheads to download once we hit that 1,000 number. Less than 200 to go. We're almost there, gang. And then I'm going to put this up for free for a month. But with the bills paid and out of the way, as the late, great Ed Piskor would say, this channel is brought to you by the comic books that I make. And now that that's out of the way, Johnny, what have you gotten us into?
Well, almost like everybody, in the 90s that was a kid or a teenager, X-Men was pretty much X-Men and Spider-Man. Those were like the two comics, especially with the X-Men cartoon that got everybody into comics who wasn't into comics.
Yeah, we used to argue in middle school. I'll never forget. Me and my friends were the drawing dorks in middle school, and we used to argue over the pronunciation of adamantium. And I forget, it's because I've always called it adamantium, and I think that's what they say on the cartoon, right? Because they finally it's like, and it was like in the previews, it was like in the trailer, like leading up to the release of it, it was like my adamantium claws or whatever Wolverine says, and I was like, I was right, I got the fucking pronunciation right. And much to the chagrin of all my nerdy friends, while everybody else was trying to get laid and smoke weed, listen to fucking Tupac and Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre, I was reading X-Men comics and watching cartoons. The girls, back in that. Let's take a little trip down memory lane, Johnny. Back in those days, kids today don't realize that there were not really very many comic book movies in the early 90s. I guess we had Batman, Batman '89, which was really popular, but it was okay to like Batman the movie, but not Batman comics.
Yeah.
And there was just no it's night and day between how kids were treated for being into drawing and comics and cartoons in the 90s compared to how they're treated today. Like today, it's just like super mainstream. Like everybody, everybody's into comics and whatever. Cartoons, take them or leave them. I guess everybody watches fucking The Simpsons, Rick and Morty, shit like that. But back then, you didn't watch. If you were cool, you didn't watch cartoons. You didn't read comic books. That's fucking. What the fuck is that? That's cool.
I believe that's Colossus.
Is he wearing a helmet?
He's got like a mask thing on. I'm pretty sure. Is that him? No, maybe that's not. That looks like a villain. Yeah, it's been so long since I've read this.
You tell me. You tell us, gang. Down in the comments, you let us know who the fuck that is. Let's get into it.
So yeah, this is around the time I started really getting into indie and like anime inspired or manga comics. This is probably an oxymoron, manga comics, but when I saw in Wizard, they had a preview of X-Men Alpha, and I hadn't actually been following X-Men, so I didn't know what was going on at the time. And I saw that cover. So they had, if you take the back of it, you can see this was what they previewed with, was this picture here. And I just was like, what is this art? This art is awesome. It almost kind of has a anime feel to it, slightly. So I was like, well, maybe I should get back into X-Men and read. And when I got to it, I realized that they had changed the whole storyline, that there was something had happened, an event that happened, that now this was a completely different future. And just like they do in the movies now, it was like alternate universe stuff, which, Days of Future Past had obviously done that beforehand, but that was before my time.
Shouts to Chris Claremont.
Yep. So to me, like seeing like, well, why does Wolverine only have one hand? And, it looks like Magneto is leading the X-Men. Like, what is going on? And I thought this was amazing as a kid. I had other people tell me otherwise, that they said that it was the worst that you could do to comics. But I really just gravitated because of this art. And when I started really reading the story and having to piece together the new world that they created through all the different runs, and they changed the name of a lot of the comics at the time to match the new world. It was just like my jam. That was like right up what I needed to get back into reading comics. So,
because this was late, like X-Men 92 was the cartoon.
Yeah.
And so at the time I was like 12 years old. And this was more 95, 96, 97. This was a little bit later. This was when I was too old to be reading comics, and largely had also by then finally gotten into girls and drugs, and was much more preoccupied with chasing tail and getting high than reading comics. But even this intrigued me in large part because I always thought Apocalypse was one of the coolest villains in the Marvel Universe, and they sell that motherfucker's voice in X-Men 92 so well. Or Apocalypse. He's just such a fucking cool character. He's like invincible. He's immortal. He's like a fucking Egyptian god or some crazy thing. He's like an Egyptian mutant that was like mummified and came back or whatever. And he's like unkillable. Like they struggle so hard to fight Apocalypse. And so even me at 16, 17 years old, even I was interested in this, but it was so fucking hard to follow which issues that you had to buy to follow the story. So I never did like get the full fucking Monty of Age of Apocalypse until eventually I ran into the X-Men Age of Apocalypse complete epic #1. So I thought to myself, like, well, here it is. Like, now I'm going to have the story told to me. But as Johnny can attest, it turns out that these issues are like the prequel issues to the X-Men Age of Apocalypse event. So this collects X-Men Chronicles #1 and 2, Tales from the Age of Apocalypse by the Light, X-Man were #1, X-Man 96 Annual, Tales from the Age of Apocalypse, Sinister Bloodlines, and Blink #1 through 4. So as I'm reading this, I'm like, this, like, what the fuck? Like, this isn't even, like, what's even fucking happening here? Like, I was so confused about this book.
Yeah, because if I remember correctly, these were issues that came out that fleshed out the world before it changed, but it wasn't what showed you what changed the world to what it is, in the current run. So I think some people were confused if they were just getting into it. Like, well, this isn't showing me how the Age of Apocalypse happened. It's just showing me what they were doing,
That fucking
before the current run of comics. And that kind of confused me as well. I had to go and find where it actually started, and find, because I hadn't been keeping up with it. So I had to go find X Factor, and that was where the Legion story actually started, that turned the Age of Apocalypse, or the X-Men world, into the Age of Apocalypse.
This fucking thing. This is fucking really cool cartoony. Sorry, gang. Really cool cartoony art.
Yeah. And this was kind of the beginning of that, you're seeing that rubbery kind of anime and styled art start to really come in.
Look at that shit. That's awesome. So it just goes and go. Oh, look at that. X-Men Chronicles, Age of Apocalypse. Look at fucking Wolverine up in Magneto's grill with that's your boy.
Yeah, that's Colossus. I don't know.
No, it isn't either. Who the fuck is that? Is that Omega? Is that Omega 1?
Oh, man, because they changed all the characters. I don't, they don't look like they normally do. So I can't even remember who they are.
Tell us in the comments. So and then I've got a number 4 in this fucking big honker. I've got my own issue of X-Men Alpha number 1, but then I've also got Generation Next Age of Apocalypse here. After Xavier, X-Men Deluxe Generation Next. What else do we have?
But this was where it really began, in Legion Quest X Factor, which is where...
Can we bust this out?
Yeah, go ahead. This is where Legion travels, or he busts out of, I can't remember where he's at, to start his mission to go back in time and kill Magneto so that he can stop Magneto before he becomes powerful.
Is this normally what Legion looks like? Because that's a cool looking motherfucker on the cover.
He always had that hair.
That's awesome. That is awesome. I'm not big. I'm not hip to the X Factor stuff. So
and I didn't really know much about Legion before Age of Apocalypse. So this was how I found out about Legion and all his powers, and that he's like multiple personalities, and all the personalities have different powers. And I was like, wow, this character's really cool. And he's the son of Professor Xavier.
That's right.
Which is why he wants to go save his father. He wants to go back in time to stop Magneto so that his father will never have to fight him again.
Killer Mystique. Shot there. Shooting our boy in the face.
And I never really read an X Factor, so this was, my introduction to X Factor. So I wasn't really familiar with a lot of the characters, but it did make me go back and start, reading more of it. That's one of the things that I give Age of Apocalypse, is it really got me into reading all the other runs of the X universe.
Did you play this Wolverine?
I'm sure I did, but I don't remember.
I don't remember much of it. This was Super Nintendo. I think I remember it being pretty cool. You could pop his claws anytime you wanted.
Oh, man.
Yeah. There's that dude again. Who the fuck is that?
Strong Man, I think.
Oh, Strong Man. Okay.
Yeah. And they actually did a show called Legion that is a
right
adaptation of the Legion character, although very different, but I suggest checking it out. I thought it was really cool.
Shining Force 2, motherfucker. I played that. Are you a Shining Force guy or
not?
Yeah.
I was not a Sega guy, but I rented the Sega at the local video store just to play Shining Force. Yeah, Shining Force
was... I didn't play a lot of role-playing games. Like, I didn't really get into the Final Fantasy series very much, but I loved the Shining Force series. I probably got a Sega. My buddy Robert, shouts to Robert Winstead, drew with me back in middle school, collected comics with me, played Magic the Gathering with me back in middle school, old school homie. I probably played Shining Force 1 at his house and freaked out and liked it so much that I bought a Sega or I didn't buy it. I begged my fucking family to buy me a Sega. And Shining Force 2, a sequel that was just as good.
Yep.
I remember Shining Force 2 being just as satisfying as the first Shining Force. It's like a role-playing game that's got all kinds of elements. It's got that Final Fantasy like not side scroll, like fighting screen where you like bounce and hit your opponent and like take off a certain number.
Turn-based.
Yeah, turn-based like fight screen. But then it also has like overhead view like strategy placement of the armies. And then you could like have these caravan vehicles where you could only pile in like 5 or 6 characters, but the game would reward you with new characters at every level. And every town you went in, you would pick up another character that you could equip onto your team. And so you would have a team of like 30 people by the end of the game, but you could only equip like 5. And so you had to choose which ones you would level up. And you'd like cycle through your characters and level everybody up for these big epic fights, where I think sometimes you would be able to put like 2 caravans into play. And then it depended on who you put in each caravan and where you placed them on the board. It's just, if you haven't played, get a what do they call, what do the kids call those? Emulator, and play you some Shining Force gang. That's a killer fucking game series. Shouts in the comments if you're a old school Shining Force player.
So yeah, this is the beginning of, and I'm sure you can go back before this to find out who Legion is and all that stuff. But this is really the seed of the Age of Apocalypse storyline happening, and it was confusing because this one's called Legion Quest in X Factor, but then they continue the Legion Quest storyline in the X-Men series, and then you have Legion Quest #1. So that was confusing to me. That I was like, well, X Factor says Legion Quest, and then Uncanny X-Men says Legion Quest #1, which is actually the first one. So actually, the X Factor is first, and then it goes into the Uncanny X-Men, and you got Legion Quest 1, 2. I believe 3, and then 4, and then after 4 is
this Legion here all fucked up.
That's so what happens is the Legion accidentally kills his father, Xavier.
Yeah,
and that's what causes the whole, because he ceases to exist, and the Age of Apocalypse happens, and then Magneto is now the leader of the X-Men to carry on his friend Charles' storyline. And then that goes right into X-Men Alpha.
So then X-Men Alpha is everything's already in place. And what does Apocalypse have to do? This is the Age of Apocalypse.
It's because Xavier was not there to stop Apocalypse from taking over the world. So it becomes the Age of Apocalypse.
And is that from is that where Cable and Bishop? That world is where that's where the humans get the Sentinels, right? And the Sentinels wipe out.
I think that's Days of Future Past.
That's Days of Future Past, and that's not an Apocalypse world.
No. And if I remember correctly, since it's been a long time since I read it, the only person that retains that the original world exists is Bishop, because he's not changed. Right, he's not changed by the world changing. Like, he keeps all of his memories. So he's like, hey, this is not the way the world's supposed to be. I could be mixing that up with Days of Future Past, but I know that he is like one of the links.
I keep popping on that fucking Sabretooth art. He just looks so cool.
Yeah.
Who's this little fucking
Wild Child, I think? Because Sabretooth is a good guy in this one now.
Yeah.
And then Rogue and Magneto are together, and they have kids because basically, if I remember correctly, they don't say it, but Magneto can make a little force field condom, so that's why he's able to touch Rogue and have kids with her. So some good guys are bad, because Cyclops is a bad guy, sort of. He's Mr. Sinister is now like the new villain, and for the X-Men instead of Magneto, and that's how Wolverine has one hand and Cyclops has one eye. Is that Wolverine and Cyclops were fighting, and Wolverine went to hit him in the face with the claw, took out his eye, but then the ruby laser took out Wolverine's hand. And I was just eating this shit up.
What issue does that happen in?
That I believe might be because I know that story's told. That might be in one of the chronicles where they go back and tell you those stories. I just remember that being the story, but like that's the one hard thing about Age of Apocalypse is that it all runs together. Like I couldn't tell you where anything happens in what issue.
There's your Sinister.
Yeah.
There's your Scott Summers, one-eyed.
And then Jean Grey is now
Cyclops.
with Wolverine, I believe.
Is that Beast?
Yeah, I think he's Dark Beast because he's now a villain.
It's the Dark Beast, man. I love it. I like all these high concept changes and everything. A lot of people think this is like cheese factor to the 10th degree, that this is like desperate moves to like shake things up and get people talking about comics again. This was after the comic speculator crash, and this was the dark days as people like to talk about in comics collecting.
I really felt like, obviously I didn't, create any of these comics, but it was an industry, but I felt like it would have been a good palate cleanse. Like, you know what, this gives me a whole new playground to be creative in. Like I can now go a whole different direction and just really.
Is that Apocalypse?
I believe so. Yeah.
That's fucking awesome. Look at him, gang. That's why you collect comic books. Look at him. He's got a 27 pack. Look at the size of that dude's pecs. That's like an Arnold Schwarzenegger. And look at the fucking size of his. It's like a Warhammer style.
His thumb is about the size of his head. His head.
Look at it, dude. He's got a thumb head. Look at it. You could swap that. You could swap that out, and you wouldn't tell the difference. A lot of people don't like it. If you hate X-Men: Age of Apocalypse, drop your hate in the comments, gang. Let us know all about it. Look at. I just love him. I love the design of Apocalypse. He's like this cyborg god, just killer. Sinister looking fucking cool here. Look at the size of that motherfucker. He's like the OP villain, right?
Yeah.
He's bigger than anybody, stronger than anybody, smarter than anybody, faster than anybody, lives longer than anybody.
It is. Finally get to see it. Jean Grey and Wolverine together.
Uh-oh. See, we're even hot-shotting the fucking Jean Grey and Wolverine kiss. Are they together in the series? Is that what the...
Yeah, there's no Scott Summers, at least in the X-Men.
Right. He didn't get cucked by Scott, so... Good stuff, dude.
And they know they did a second run of Age of Apocalypse.
There's your boy Zach likes to say that Rogue only had a fucking donk in one like frame from one angle in X-Men 92, but Zach, buddy, she's always had that donk, and she always will have that donk, and I don't want to hear fucking otherwise. Rogue has that ass, and that's just all there is fucking to it. And don't you forget. All right.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of the second run of Age of Apocalypse. I don't even remember how they brought it back, but the OG Age of Apocalypse still, I think, one of the greatest, if not the greatest run for me.
My greatest run is yet to come, gang, and maybe yours is too. If you despise X-Men Age of Apocalypse, well, send us what you think is the better X-Men series to Kevin Strange, P.O. Box number 5, Cottage Hills, Illinois 62018. If you've got dupes laying around your dollar bin, you got dollar bin doubles, send them our way. If you've got a comic that's burning up your little hand pieces that you want to hear us review and discuss on the channel, send it our way to the P.O. Box. If you're a creator and you have your own books that you want to see reviewed here on the channel, then send those to the little P.O. Box piece. And I think that'll about do it for today's episode. Johnny, I appreciate you joining me.
Yep.
And I hope I see you guys all at the dollar bin. And remember to keep on digging.